Coming up on this episode of Falmouth in Focus, sit down with the Red Sox Hall of Famer, take a tour of Falmouth's newly completed water treatment facility, and speak with policymakers and influencers about the importance of climate change to Cape Cod. All this and much more on this edition of Falmouth in Focus.
Hello and welcome to Falmouth in Focus, FCTV's current affairs program. I'm Michael Kasparian, president of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, and I'm excited to join you as your host. We start this episode with a visit to the steps of the Massachusetts State House. On June 13th, concerned citizens gathered to voice their dissatisfaction over the federal government's decision to exit the Paris Climate Accord and to express their support for Bill H. 3564, which would have Massachusetts rejoin the international agreement. Among those speaking at the rally were State Representative Dylan Fernandes and Woods Hole Research Center President and Executive Director, Dr. Philip Duffy, who explained why this development is so troublesome for those living on the Cape.
So the Paris Accord is this agreement which every single nation in the world signed except for Syria and Nicaragua. And the only reason Nicaragua didn't sign it is because they didn't think it was aggressive enough in addressing our climate change goals.
What's interesting about the agreement is that those commitments are developed independently by each country. There's actually they're not negotiated. But every country simply decides what it's comfortable with in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that's its commitment.
We are sending an extremely strong message, and the strongest message in the nation, by saying that we stand in solidarity with the global community and not only hitting the greenhouse gas emission goals set forth in the Paris Agreement, but also by holding ourselves accountable to them through transparent and international reporting. And that's how this bill is a novel piece of legislation, and that's how this bill will make Massachusetts the environmental leader that it is.
There's no issue that will have greater impact on my generation, to my children's generation, than that of climate change. It's already having a devastating effect across our state, especially with impact of stronger storms and higher waters on our coastal communities. And I'm personally invested in this. As someone who represents Falmouth and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, I might not have a district unless we address sea level rise and global warming.
Residents have been fired up. We've had hundreds of people send in mail and postcards to different reps and senators in the building to move forward the bill.
It's actually stimulating a lot of action at the state and local level.
One of our biggest economic driver on the Cape and Islands is our environment. If we don't have a clean and healthy environment, that will affect our economy, that will affect our jobs.
But as the federal government takes a giant step back, it's time for Massachusetts to step up and lead. And we must stand in solidarity with our global community in the effort to combat climate change. And that's exactly what our bill does. House Bill 3564 affirms our commitment to the greenhouse gas emission standards set forth in the Paris Climate Agreement, a goal that we are already on target to hit because of our Global Warming Solutions Act.
And here in Massachusetts, we should set ourselves apart and lead on this, and that's what this bill does.
Thanks to Chris McNeil for that coverage. In 2015, the town of Falmouth began work on a $41 million water filtration project for Long Pond. Now nearing completion, the project is expected to be operational this summer. Water Superintendent Steve Rafferty gave us a look at the plant, which will provide a modern filtration system to Falmouth's drinking water supply.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Steve Rafferty. I'm the town's water superintendent, and we're now just a little bit beyond 2 years since we started construction out here. Where I'm standing 2 years ago was trees and gravel, dug a big hole. I think some of you saw that. We put the concrete in, we put the building up, we put all the equipment inside of it, and we're now at the point where we're doing the finishing touches. We're going to do final paving next week if everything goes according to schedule. You'll see shortly, I hope, a little bit of where the budding grass is coming up from where we've loamed and seeded. There's not many people inside because although it's a good sized plant, it's a plant designed to run automatically and be monitored remotely. It's a true state-of-the-art facility that the town, the state, and anybody that's in the profession can be proud of, and that the town will get excellent water from. We're making water today, and the water that we're making is not going yet to your house. We have a big pond out back that we're allowed to dump it into, and then it soaks back into the ground and goes through the groundwater back to the pond so we don't waste any of it. So let's go inside. So we're out here in the treatment plant portion of the facility. A little bit of background noise because we have pumps and motors running. But what I'm standing to right next to is the dissolved air flotation thickener. This is where the water first comes into the plant. We've added a coagulant, polyaluminum chloride, which helps to pull the algae in the pond together a little bit. The stainless steel pipes behind me are putting in a combination of water and air and making very, very tiny bubbles. You can't see the tiny bubbles today. They're coming in at the far end of this tank. And this nice brown carpet you're looking at down here is algae that's been in the pond that we're removing by floating little air bubbles up underneath it. The clean water is sinking down and going out pipes from the bottom of this tank and going over through the ozone contactor. So after we remove the algae from the water, the next step is that it leaves this building, goes to a couple of tanks outside where we add ozone to it to oxidize the water and help to break down things that are less visible than the algae. There's still a lot of little particles in the water. We want to give it that really good clean polishing, and we want to run it over activated carbon, much like anybody that's got a home filter before we built this plant used an activated carbon filter to get that final polish on their water that arrives at their house. I'm standing next to one of 4 filter tanks. The water is coming into the filter tank. When you get a chance to see down inside the tank, it's hard to see the water moving because it's not intended to move very rapidly. It's intended to go through very slowly and work efficiently. So we're downstairs now in the piping gallery. And this pipe here is coming from the ozone contactor. It's got the ozonated water in it. And when we were doing the backwash, this is the water that's got to get into the tank to go through the filter. Up above me, there's a 30-inch valve. That valve is operated by pneumatic air, and it opens and closes. So when we were watching the backwash before, that valve closed to stop the water coming in. And then when the backwash was all finished, that valve opened back up again to reintroduce the water back in to the filters. So we're sort of wrapping up the tour of the finished facility at this point. And we're standing in the lab. And the reason we have a lab, even though it's an automated plant and we've got all sorts of measuring devices spread throughout the plant, we trust, but we like to verify. We didn't have a lab like this before. We had a much more basic lab. This is going to make a big difference in being able to ensure the highest level of water for you, the citizens of Falmouth. We appreciate your patience while we've been getting the plant ready and bringing it online. And we hope you enjoy the water you're going to see going forward. Thank you.
You can watch the tour of the facility in its entirety on Channel 15 or on demand at fctv.org. Thanks to Jeff Wyman for that piece. There are always topics to report on from Town Hall, and this week is no exception. Here are some updates from recent municipal meetings chosen based on community impact.
In last Monday's Selectmen's meeting, the board discussed the upcoming winter and spring schedule for the Steamship Authority. The board heard from Steamship Representative Betsy Gladfelder explaining the process and schedule for the ferries. After hearing about a public hearing regarding the 5:30 a.m. ferry to Martha's Vineyard, the board opted to draft a letter in support of the public to discontinue the 5:30 a.m. ferry, stating it is an undue burden to the citizens living near the Steamship Authority in Woods Hole.
I'm very comfortable with making that request, but I also understand the challenges that the Steamship Authority has.
So do you think it would make sense for the board to make us be specific with respect to the 5:30 being?
I do.
stopped.
I agree. I think a 5:30 boat would be okay if it was a passenger ferry, but I just don't understand, and I've got the explanation, but just because the truck drivers want to be early and do their deliveries, I just don't think it's enough of a reason. I think we're justified to send a request.
Do either of you want to make that a motion?
I will make that motion.
Or that was really your motion, I suppose?
Yeah, that was. I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Abstain.
One abstention.
Director of Public Works, Ray Jack, gave his monthly report to the board regarding the two major water construction projects in town. Mr. Jack was pleased to announce that both projects are under budget and on time as expected. The Little Pond Sewer Service Area construction is very much complete, and the water filtration plant is nearly complete with minor finishing touches to be added. Mr. Jack anticipates the water plant being completed this June or July, during which the current Long Pond pump station is to be decommissioned.
Under budget and on time, you don't hear those terms all the time, and the project manager essentially was the town, or in terms of the expertise and reviewing everything and looking at the change orders, and it's congratulations are due.
Well, thank you, but I'd like to take the credit, but there's a few people that it really gets spread around, and I can't underscore the efforts of our town manager, Mr. Suso, our finance director, Jennifer Pettit. She did a fabulous job with the funding and working through the project with us. Steve Rafferty, the water superintendent, Amy Lowell, wastewater superintendent, did a phenomenal job throughout the project. So I think it was a great team effort. We were fortunate. We had good engineers and good contractor. So everybody worked well together during the entire process.
The Farley Bog property sale lease agreement was also under consideration on Monday night. Town Manager Suso explained details about the agreement to the board while stating that the sale amount and title exchange will be brought to Town Council for final confirmation. The selectmen chose to sell the land to the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club and authorized the change of use.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to
Yes.
thank the town officials, selectmen, Concon, and town meeting for their unanimous vote of confidence for us to start on this project.
Exciting
Thank you all.
project, and thank you. I'll just mention Dave Vieira as well, who was there from the beginning.
Yes.
Very much appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Dan.
To watch any of these meetings in their entirety, please visit FCTV's website at fctv.org to view the programming schedule. Foul weather hasn't stopped fisherman Ryan Collins from picking up his lure. Here's the latest edition of My Fishing Cape Cod.
Raining like crazy. Probably 40-something with the wind chill.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the My Fishing Cape Cod Falmouth Fishing Report. What you're watching right now is My Fishing Cape Cod founder and creator Ryan Collins fishing some foul weather in Cape Cod Bay. He's throwing a white and blue guppy pencil popper, which is an excellent lure during the spring.
There's a better one. This guy feels pretty decent. What a day. My gosh. Oh, right here. Oh, that's a 25-pounder right here.
What you're watching right here are thousands of striped bass hugging very tight to shore in shallow water.
Oh my God, what a fish.
Though this footage is from Cape Cod Bay, there's a huge number of fish in the area right now, and you can easily find them in Falmouth. Generally speaking, you either want to be fishing at dawn, dusk, nighttime, or just before or during a storm. Fishing during those times gives you your optimal chance of catching striped bass from shore. However, if you're not able to get out during dawn, dusk, nighttime, or during a storm, you can still find fish in broad daylight. When fishing the daylit hours, I find it helpful to scale back the size of my lure. In this case, I'm using a Rebel jumping minnow to get these fish to bite. As you can hear from the wind noise in this video, a light onshore breeze makes for ideal fishing conditions. And if you're more of a boat fisherman, there have been some awfully big fish in the Buzzards Bay area.
Just hold on, that's all. Come on, baby. Can't do nothing. I don't want to. Nice. It seems to be. Big fish.
Until next month, this is Andrew Burke of My Fishing Cape Cod signing off. Tight lines and take care.
Thanks to Ryan Collins for that submission. Right now, we're going to take a break to learn about an adoptable dog from Friends of Falmouth Dogs. When we come back, we'll talk with a Red Sox legend, see highlights from Falmouth High School's graduation, and check in with Cape Cod Health News to learn more about a new treatment for an all-too-common heart condition. Stay with us.
Shorty appears to be a mix of Rottweiler and one of the Pit Bull breeds. He has a big head and shorter legs. 3 things really stand out about Shorty. He's sweet, he's smart, and he is strong. Because of his strength, we're only considering homes with adults, no children. A very smart dog, he's also eager to please. He learns quickly. He accepts praise as a reward as much as treats. He's very loving and affectionate. His first instinct is to climb on a lap, but given his size, we've been discouraging this. He needs an owner who will give him leadership and will continue his training. An owner experienced with the breeds would be a plus. If you're interested in Shorty, call Friends of Falmouth Dogs at 508-548-7742 or email info@friendsoffalmouthdogs.org.
Welcome back. Falmouth High School recently said farewell to their 2017 graduating class. FCTV was there to provide you with scenes of the ceremony.
Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. This is a very special day for all of you, seniors and your families. It is the culmination of 12 years of hard work, 12 years of friendships, 12 years of sports and clubs and classes, and most of all, 12 years of growing up to be the wonderful young adults who are sitting here today.
I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge 2 of our classmates who are not here with us today, James Lavin and Owen Higgins. But I think that most of you would agree that they are here today and that they both continue to be a very big part of the class of 2017. I promise not to bore you with the generic graduation speech. I won't lie to you and tell you that when I look out into the crowd today, I see future doctors, lawyers, and scientists. Oh no. Let's be real here. The class of 2017 is unlike any before, and we may never see anything like it again. We are so diverse, and at the same time, so similar. Our musicians and bands are world-class, to say the least. Our nerds are some of the brightest kids I've ever met. And our athletes, Well, I think their undefeated season can speak for itself. Am I right? Come on, guys. We're like the Tom Brady of graduating classes, okay? We are the GOAT. And every one of you graduates is capable of making a change in the world. You really are. Over the past few months especially, I've seen you fight so hard for what you believe in. Not just in school or at home, but in your community. If you put that effort into the adult world, you'll be amazed by what you accomplish.
And now it is my pleasure and great honor to announce that by the authority vested in me, I publicly affirm these members of the class of 2017 have successfully completed the requirements prescribed by the state of Massachusetts, the Falmouth School Committee, and the Falmouth High School administration and faculty. Congratulations.
232 seniors received their diplomas at the Antonucci Fieldhouse this year. Thanks to Ryan Weber for that overview. From 1963 to 1976, Rico Petrocelli patrolled the Fenway infield and has cemented himself as one of the finest shortstops in Red Sox history. Wayne Soares had the chance to sit down with the legend and talk about Rico's new book documenting the impossible dream team of 67, who are celebrating their 50-year anniversary this year.
Your book, 1967 American League champion Red Sox, you went on to go to the 7 games with the St. Louis Cardinals. Tell us what's so special. Your book is about Tales from the Dugout, about the 1967 Red Sox. This is the 50th anniversary of the team.
50 years.
What was so special about that team? And of course, we all know going from last to first and capturing the pennant.
The big thing is I tell people that it wasn't a great team because Yaz had a great year. He was a great player. Lonborg, and they all won awards, Cy Young and MVP. Yaz with Triple Crown. Dick Williams won the Manager of the Year, and Dick O'Connell, a general manager, won the Executive of the Year, and they deserved it. They really deserved it. The rest of us helped. You know, we had pretty decent years. But the big key, that season brought back the interest, because prior to that, we had terrible teams. We lost 100 games, 99. When Ted Williams, when he retired, Yaz took over. The expectations were so high. He put so much pressure on Yaz in that 1961, and he, you know, he, for a young kid, he did well, but it didn't. It came to 67 that we said, man, we're tired of losing. Dick Williams came on the scene. A lot of the young guys who came up through the organization were on the Red Sox, and we said, let's go, let's develop. You know, they said, let's develop the young guys, and you know, maybe a couple of years from now we can win a pennant. And we were 101 shot. And all of a sudden, after the All-Star break, we won 10 in a row on the road. It's a miracle. And we were like, I don't know, half a game out or something like that. And then we kept battling the rest of the way. And it came down to the last day. It was so exciting. And the fans started coming out. Kids were, you know, families and all that. And boy, it was just great. It was so much fun.
How would Rico Petrocelli, how would you like to be remembered as a player and as a human being?
As a player, well, I know I should have been better than I was, but that, you know, I was a part of a team that the 67 team, 75 team played in a couple of World Series, but you know, try to treat people right. That's the big thing. See, my belief is that we're not our vocation, ball player. You know, my vocation is playing baseball. That's not the person I am. If anything, being remembered as the player, and I caught the last ball, isn't as important to me as me being the person that you know, I hope to be. I hoped to be, and I hope I am, and that is caring for other people.
Rico's book, Tales from the 1967 Red Sox Dugout, is filled with more insights from that memorable season. Thank you to Mark Finneran and John Snyder for that piece. Experts predict that by the end of the decade, nearly 20 million people will be affected by atrial fibrillation, also known as a-fib. In this next segment, we hear from local cardiologist Dr. Peter Friedman about a new development in the treatment of this condition.
The arrhythmia that we're talking about is something called atrial fibrillation or fibrillation, some people say. Call it AF for short. It's the most common arrhythmia that we see in patients. And we're really in the midst of an epidemic of this arrhythmia because as people get older, it becomes more common. It's been estimated now that there may be 5 million patients in this country that have it, and that number is expected to grow to about 20 million by the end of the decade. So lots of patients with this problem. The issue with atrial fibrillation is that the upper chambers of the heart, instead of all the cells being activated at the same time and the two upper chambers contracting, when the patients are in AF, the upper chambers are just quivering. Every cell is being activated independently of every other cell, so there's no organized contraction in the upper chambers. The lower chambers are beating fine. They're going faster than they should, and they're irregular because they're being bombarded by impulses from above, but the problem's in the upper chambers. And the main problem with this arrhythmia is that because the upper chambers are quivering and not contracting, the blood can stagnate in the heart, and one can develop blood clots, which then can break loose and cause stroke. Stroke is actually the most common complication of AF, and the strokes that happen in these patients tend to be very large and very disabling strokes. So one of the mainstays of treatment of AF is a drug called an anticoagulant, also known as a blood thinner, to prevent the blood from clotting and to prevent stroke. And there are a number of agents that are available for this. The old standby, a drug that's been around for decades and decades, is a drug called Coumadin, also referred to as warfarin. It's very effective at preventing blood clot and stroke, but there are some issues with that drug that make it not ideal. So the blood clots that form a stroke are blood clots that form on the left side of the heart because those blood clots can break loose and then enter the systemic circulation. And most of those blood clots form in the upper left-sided chamber, a chamber called the left atrium. And specifically within the left atrium, there's a little outpouching, if you will, a little balloon-like structure that's attached to the rest of the atrium called the atrial appendage. It's not in the mainstream of the blood flow, and there are lots of little nooks and crannies in the atrial appendage. So the blood that enters the atrial appendage tends to stagnate there, and that's where most of these blood clots form. It's been estimated that 90% of the clots in AF that cause stroke actually come from the left atrial appendage. The problem comes when patients are on an anticoagulant and they have a bleeding complication, or if they have a lifestyle that makes taking a blood thinner or an anticoagulant problematic. For example, someone who plays hockey or someone who's a downhill skier. You know, if you're taking an anticoagulant and you fall on the ski slope, that has potentially very serious consequences. So there's always been this desire to look for some other method of preventing stroke other than an anticoagulant, a medicine that someone needs to take all the time. And that's what led to the development of this new technology, this new device called a left atrial appendage occluder, also referred to as the Watchman device. If you can imagine, the device looks a little bit like an umbrella. And what we do is we go through the veins in the leg with catheters. We go up inside the heart. We're on the right side of the heart. We have to get over to the left side. The way we do that is to do something called a transseptal catheterization. So with a needle on the end of a catheter, we actually poke a hole in the wall that separates the right atrium from the left atrium, and then we can pass a catheter through that hole into the left atrium. Once we're in the left atrium, we advance the catheter into the atrial appendage, and then within that catheter we have folded up this Watchman device. We place the Watchman device in the atrial appendage and remove the catheter that surrounds the device, and as we remove that catheter, the device expands and actually sits in the atrial appendage and covers over the opening. Now over time, about 45 days or so, the body actually heals over that device. So there's natural tissue that grows in and causes a permanent seal. And once that's done, then no blood can get into the atrial appendage and no blood clots in the appendage can get out. I can imagine a day not too far in the distant future where this device may actually become first-line therapy for many patients.
Thanks to Cape Cod Health News for that piece. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at one of Falmouth's most beloved celebrations. Stay with us.
Sergei Khrushchev, son of former Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, will join us this summer for a special lecture about his personal insights into the Cuban Missile Crisis. We are pleased to collaborate with the John F. Kennedy Hyannis Museum for this special evening in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the birth of JFK. The event will be at Falmouth Academy's Simon Center for the Performing Arts on Wednesday, July 19, and will be hosted by WCAI-FM's Mindy Todd of The Point. Space is limited to 300, including a limited amount of spots for a VIP meet and greet with Dr. Khrushchev and his wife Valentina. Reservations and more information available on our website at museumsonthegreen.org.
Here at FCTV, we want you to know that television can be as easy as hitting record on your smartphone. We'd like to invite all Falmouth residents and visitors to share their slice of life with us. Email us your photos and videos or upload them to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram using the hashtag MyFalmouth or Falmouth in Focus to be featured on the show. Thank you to our most recent contributors. We leave you now with the sights and sounds of Arts Alive in downtown Falmouth. Thanks for watching Falmouth in Focus. We'll see you next time.
Please be